Alright, so in today's video we're going to be tearing down this 12 volt air compressor. Now this unit has a fault and it acts like there's no connection between the motor and the compressor itself. This fault developed after the compressor ran continuously for quite a while, so I'm assuming something overheated and probably broke in the compressor itself. So I'm going to go ahead and try to power this thing up just to show you guys what it does. I may not be able to supply enough power with my bench equipment here, but we're going to try to get 12 volts, however many amps I can put out with this thing. 12 volts, 10 amps. Alright, so let's go ahead and try to just power this thing briefly just to show you what it does. As you can probably hear, it definitely doesn't sound like an air compressor and kind of sounds like a bad bearing or something along those lines, but let's go ahead and see if we can't get into this thing. So I'll go ahead and take the screws off the top and see what we can find. So these screws are quite long. They seem to go all the way down into the unit there. Actually, it looks like the screws are long enough to the point where they go down into these little areas. So that must be where the threads for them are. So this thing on the inside is really nasty. I'm not sure why. This thing really hasn't been used all that much. Let's see if we can get the rest of this off. Apparently everything's just going to kind of slide off of there. So this is kind of... I assume that this was supposed to be some kind of cooling thing, and it does get warm, but it's not like directly coupled to the inside of a cylinder here. So that comes off. This feels like it's got some oil or some kind of grease inside of it. And then in there is the thing that actually gives us our reciprocating action. And there's a little gasket in here, and then there's a gasket on the top of our cylinder head. And this thing's got a little reed valve in here, which I'm sure is acting like a check valve, so it actually builds pressure. And this whole thing in here is moving back and forth, and I'm assuming that that's not supposed to happen. So let's see if we can't get the mounting bracket off, and whatever else comes off with the mounting bracket, maybe everything comes out. So inside of this you can see how it gets the reciprocating motion. It's just doing a little something like that in order to make this move up and down. And that whole thing just pulls right out, which I'm not sure if it should or not. I have to look at this. There we go. Not really sure if that was just supposed to pull out like that. Maybe. But it's kind of doubtful, it seems like. And this is just a bearing where that shaft went through. I'm guessing that these two screws have to come out now because it looks like they go all the way through to here and here, and I don't see any way to take this piece off anyhow. So let's go ahead and try to get those out. Quite large Phillips head screws. Yep, that definitely went all the way through there. And this piece is going to fall off now as soon as I get this screw out. There we go. So that's just got a bearing in it. And in here we have what look to be the exploded remains of a motor. So there's this little clip. This looks like it was just being used as a spacer, and then this looks like another piece of gasket. I'm not sure what that came out of. What it looks like is the shaft of the motor is actually this piece, and it just completely sheared off is what I'm assuming happened here, because that would have went into here. Then the motor would have spun this. Also the magnet in here for the motor is completely loose now. I'm not sure if that's from me taking it apart or if it was like that. Anyway, this thing looks like it just kind of snapped right off of there, which is kind of nuts, really. Let's see if anything more wants to pull out of this. Looks like I'm going to get one of the magnets out. Maybe not. There we go. Some really large magnets in that. And this is the actual rotor itself. Quite a heavy, beefy thing. There's the two brushes. Yeah, you can see where these parts came from. If you look at this, you've got the same spacer, a little thing that looks like their gasket material, and then that E-clip. And that's exactly what came off of the front side. So what I'm assuming happened here, so if you look at it, we have this little C-clip, and where that C-clip is, there's a groove all the way around the shaft so that clip fits in there. So what it looks like is right where that groove is, that shaft just completely snapped. All right, so looking at the rest of the stuff in here, so these are the brushes and the brush holders. One thing that I don't really like about this piece is that this positive connection to the brush holder is like really loose. I'm not sure how much that really matters because of course the this piece of wire is going to carry current as well. Anyway, the brushes, brush holders, it's made out of brass it looks like, and they seem okay. And you can see the bearing down in there. I think that's a ZZ809 is what the size on that it is. Rotor itself is quite a hefty thing. The commutator here is still in good shape because like I said, this really wasn't used all that much. It's not really any major glaringly obvious signs of like thermal damage on any of these parts either. One thing I do hear people mention when they tear apart motors is that if the factory wants them to last a long time, they'll put like glue around the wiring to keep this stuff from vibrating loose and just snapping apart. And there's definitely no glue to be found anywhere in this. But of course, this is a device that's really not meant to be used constantly. It's just an intermittent thing. I really don't see anything on this rotor that makes it look like they tried to balance it. There's like a little notch cut in this and there's a little notch cut in this, but I don't really think that that would do much, especially considering that I believe that that piece is just plastic. I don't think that thing's metal at all. Anyway, that's what the rotor looks like. Still in good shape, of course. With the little cylinder here, you can kind of see on the inside where the piston was actually moving up and down. It's probably only a little half-inch section in there that this would have gone up and down in. So this would have gone from about right there, it looks like, up to the top and then back down again every time the motor spun around. So the actual piston ring on this guy, if the camera would focus on it, this thing around the outside, I gotta flip this over because apparently it's recognizing this as a face. But anyway, the ring on the outside of this is made out of some form of plastic. Another thing that I do notice about it is that that outside plastic ring probably has to be flexible because there's nothing on here that allows this piston to stay straight. So of course, as this is turning around, this piston is going to be going back and forth like this slightly, which of course makes the top of the piston move back and forth like that slightly. And it does feel like it's got quite a bit of a range there where it still seals. It's part of the reason why they use that flexible little ring. This thing at one point definitely had some oil in it. You can kind of see it's leaking out of the bearing area now, and the bearings and everything seem pretty smooth. Kind of amazing how cleanly that shaft just broke off. Kind of surprised that that shaft broke, really. Wouldn't really think that the motor would be able to put out enough torque to break its own shaft, but maybe it did. Maybe it got jarred as it was spinning at just the wrong time and it snapped it. It may have been a sort of compound thing over time, because of course a motor is going to try to spin this and it's not actually going to spin, it's going to reciprocate this thing up and down. So that's adding a lot of vibrations, and maybe that cracked it over time, and of course it broke at the weakest point right where that C-clip was. If you're curious why they had to put the C-clip there, it looks like all that does is keep this from going in too far and rubbing on everything, so that just keeps everything aligned. So this is what the magnet from the motor looks like, and then of course there's another one on the other side of the casing, but it looks like this guy was just kind of glued in there. And you can see on this thing where the rotor was scraping it after that shaft broke. The other magnet's still glued in here really tightly. Kind of wondering if maybe what happened to this thing was the glue got hot and somehow melted off, and the magnet fell, hit this, and somehow ended up breaking it, or if this thing fell off, started scraping on here, and then the magnet got ripped off. I'm not really sure what happened to this thing, but the shaft definitely broke straight off of the motor no matter what happened or what caused it. So anyway, that's about it for now, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.